great. I hope you're doing well. I hope that you're just enjoying your day and that you also enjoy this lesson. Let's start with prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your love. We thank you that you are with us in all this uncertainty and just all these things that we don't know and don't understand, Lord. I just pray that you would help us to continue to look to you. We pray all these things in your name. Amen. Okay, our memory verse is Proverbs 19:21, and it says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." I'll read that again. This is Proverbs 19:21, your memory verse. "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." This week we're talking about Nehemiah rebuilds the wall, and today we're talking about Nehemiah finds favor. We're going to read Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Nehemiah 2, 1 through 4. In the month of Nishan, the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. So the king asked me, "Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill?" "This can be nothing but sadness of heart." I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my fathers are buried lies in ruin, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" The king said to me, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, "If it pleases the king, if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my fathers are buried, so that I can rebuild it." In Nehemiah's day, it would have been very dangerous to go into the king's presence without a pleasant expression. Nehemiah knew that his heart was so sad it could easily be seen in his face. Therefore, it took great courage for him to enter the king's presence, because he could have been executed or killed. Nehemiah was a man of great character, and the king cared for him and was more concerned with Nehemiah's sadness than with the law. Even though Nehemiah was terrified that the king noticed his sadness, he boldly mentioned what was on his heart. God began answering Nehemiah's earlier prayer for favor with the king through Nehemiah's own relationship with the king. Artaxerxes. Nehemiah says a quick prayer before he answers the king. He knew that years earlier, King Artaxerxes had halted the rebuilding of the city. So it took great courage to make such a request. Now we're going to read Nehemiah 2, 5 through 20. And I answered the king, if it pleases the king, if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah, where my fathers are buried, so that I can rebuild it. Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, how long will your journey take, and when will you get back? It pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. I said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governor of Trans-Euphrates, so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah? And may I have a letter to Ashaph, keeper of the king's forests, so that he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple, and for the city walls, and for the residence I will occupy. And because the gracious hand of my God was upon me, the king granted my request. So I went to the governor of Trans-Euphrates and gave them the king's letters. The king had also sent army officers and cavalry with me. When Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard about this, they were very much disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there for 3 days, I set out during the night with a few men. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the ones I was riding on. By night, I went out through the valley gate toward the jackal well and the dung gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. Then I moved on toward the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews or the priests or nobles or officials or any others who would be doing the work. Then I said to them, "You see the trouble we are in? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be disgraced. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God upon me and what the king had said to me. They replied, "Let us start rebuilding." So they began the good work, this good work. Wait, 20. But when Sanballat the Horite, Tobiah the Amorite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. "What is this you are doing?" they asked. "Are you rebelling against the king?" I answered them by saying, "The God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem, or any claim or historic right to it." Nehemiah had been praying for God's wisdom. So when the king asked what he wanted, Nehemiah immediately responded, permission to rebuild, to return to Jerusalem, to lead the rebuilding of the wall by the Israelites living there. This marks the third return. Through God's provision, the king gave favor to Nehemiah and granted Nehemiah's requests. The king also gave him what he needed. God's will was accomplished through King Artaxerxes as well as Nehemiah. How did Nehemiah show leadership abilities? Nehemiah prayed first. When the king asked for his request, Nehemiah had his request ready to present in detail. He had thought about it, prayed about it again for God's wisdom, and had a plan ready to set in motion. Then he boldly made his request, even though he knew that the king had previously stopped the project. He trusted God for favor. Nehemiah impacted the walls before he said anything to the people, so that he knew what needed to be done. Nehemiah inspected the walls before he had said anything to the people, so he knew what needed to be done. He carefully planned his approach to the project and motivated others to rebuild the wall. It's needless to say, he thought through things. Let's look at some questions. What was Nehemiah's relationship with King Artaxerxes? He was a trusted servant, and the king cared about him. How did the relationship play an important role in Nehemiah's request to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem? Since they had a good relationship, the king was willing to hear him and grant Nehemiah's request because he trusted him. How was Nehemiah bold and courageous? He let the king see his sadness. He asked the king's permission to rebuild Jerusalem's wall. How did Nehemiah show leadership? He prayed first. He planned what to say and what he would need to accomplish the job of building the wall of Jerusalem. He boldly made his request and trusted God. He had faith. He wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. Like, He had faith, he prayed, he had a plan. He just wasn't going about it all willy-nilly. So now that we've read the lesson, you're going to do workbook page 32.2, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye. God bless.